Season 7, Episode 28, number 293 of the Decoded Podcast. Yesterday, you were going to say something?
Nope.
Oh, it sounded like you were rolling up to say something.
No.
Okay. Yesterday, I was listening to a podcast. Jocko Willink and Dr. Huberman, and I think it was like 400 and something, the episode. I'm like, we've been in the game for 7 years. How can we only be sitting at 293 and Jocko's at 493? It was one of those moments. I was like, that guy's not been around for 7 years. But I know that he does it more as a job than how we use it. But a couple of other interesting things about that episode yesterday is that they talked about podcasting. And they talked about, hey, if you're going to podcast, if you're going to do this and get into this thing because you think it's going to make you money and millions of people are going to come listen to you, don't do it. But if you're going to do this thing because you got something to say and you can move in a direction that will possibly benefit you and others if they listen, then go for it.
Mm-hmm.
I had a big smile on my face thinking, this is what you and I have been doing forever. We just do what we do. And it works for us, right? I don't think you and I have ever talked about how do we make money off of this thing. Like that's just not part of our equation.
Yeah, not in any sort of tactical form. I think we've kind of giggled about it, the what if.
Oh, yeah, we've had fun with it for sure.
Yeah, definitely done the what if pieces, but never. I mean, a big part of it is we know where we kind of lie on this and what our willingness to invest. Like there's no mystery that neither one of us right now has the interest in going back into pre-decoded life, like the hustle of having to sort of do all that extra logistical work. Neither one of us are interested, so it's a non-starter for me. I'm not really interested in sort of being back in that zone. So yeah, pretty easy decision for me. This is doing everything that I need it to do.
Rochelle's with us. GM Rochelle, thanks for hanging out.
GM Rochelle, nice to see ya.
What kind of week did you have at work?
This week, what was the week like? The week, so the week was like, it was like a bunch of buzzer beaters. So there are just things kind of popping up that when I look at them as events in the timeline of the school year, these are the things that are popping up that I'm thinking to myself, there's no way I'm going to be able to work on this effectively at this point in the school year. So some of the sudden, like, oh, can you sort of do this? And oh, can this kind of happen? I felt like this was the week that other people expected me to be on their lists at school. And I found myself in many cases saying, nope, I do not have the time. It's not going to happen. Like whatever you were thinking when you started to include me in this plan, back it up, because I don't have time. I don't have the time or the interest in sort of fulfilling that. And it's funny because sometimes, and in one of the cases it was like this, that stuff is actually mandatory stuff. Like it actually is like real stuff you have to deliver. And I have to decide what version of me I'm going to be in that moment. Like, am I going to sort of get locked up in emotion and just like, and kind of heel drag? Or do I just kind of say, make a note, and then on my, because I have a, I keep a running list, a Google Doc on the monthly, and I kind of refresh it each year of timelines that, in some timelines that I am on other people's lists and timelines, I just don't always track them well because I'm looking at my own calendar. So on there, for example, or I have different deadlines, soft deadlines for when IEP things have to be in, when different spec ed meetings are going to happen, timelines in the school. When I kind of go, oh, that's when they talk about that. I'll plunk that on that same calendar. So each year when I come back to it in September, I can look at September and say last year, and I put dates beside each one. So September, and it's kind of in um, item in chronological order. So if an item repeats but it shifts a week, it's still like the next title down. So it's kind of like by alpha, and then within alpha chronological, and then the overall is by the month. So I have a pretty robust list of what I'm directly responsible for and what other people are going to say, hey, by the way, did you know? And if I, sometimes I forget. If I go and I look at my master timeline, I'm like, yeah, I remember last year you asked me to sort of do this. And it's been really, really useful. Really, really useful. Yeah, it's allowing me to sort of have a little bit of calm, because if I choose to sort of look a couple months down, I'm like, oh yeah, shit. That's why December is the hell month. I'm like, because all these different things coincide, right? So, but this was the week where the things that I was being asked, there was quite a few things that I hadn't actually plotted on my timeline. So it was adding to that and then deciding how immediately. I kind of go back to that Eisenhower matrix often. Important, not important. Why am I dropping it? I'm dropping what the two other criteria are. What are the two other criteria?
I
Because it's
know
not important right now.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't. I know what you're talking about, but I can't see it.
I'm going to check it right now, because Eisenhower matrix images. So yes, it's urgent, not urgent, important, not important.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I use that all the time. Someone puts me on their timeline, I use that matrix right away. And it's not like it's not like stuff couldn't shift around on it, but I have to decide when someone surprises me with something in that moment, or they say 3 weeks from now, can you do this? I have to decide how I'm going to, what sort of energy I'm going to use to execute it.
Hmm.
So that's been very useful to me, because I've said this before to you. I don't like being on other people's invisible lists. I hate it. Hate it. Um, However, it happens. It happens. And you sometimes don't have a choice. People, because sometimes it's your boss, and your boss will sort of say, we need this report done, and it's in your portfolio. So I think in order to sort of protect myself from other people's lists, and it's not a perfect system, I've done this timeline. If I were super ninja about it, I'd actually build a timeline with reminders on it. So it'd give me a week heads up. Hey, remember next week, and it would pop up on my phone. Next week, remember this time last year. Maybe I should try and figure out how to do that. Hey, Clef, this time last year, you were asked to do this. That'd be kind of useful. Maybe I should try to figure out how to do that. I
That
don't
would
know
be
if you,
cool.
yeah, I don't know. I think, can I do that? I think I could do that. I think because I have it in a Google Doc, I think I can assign it, depending on how I create the list. I think I can put them in as tasks, and I think I can put them in as repeating tasks, and it'll pop up in my Google Calendar. I think maybe I'll look into it. Again, urgent, not urgent, important, not important.
Right, right.
Not urgent, but important. So if it's the great thing is, if you say it's not urgent but important, then that means you're in the deciding zone. So you're still in that thinking mode. If I say it's not urgent, not important, then I just get rid of it. But it's not there. I think I still need to think about this. So
I
then I
like.
have to decide if the thinking about it is urgent or not. It's a rabbit hole, right? It's
Yeah,
a rabbit hole. Is the actual thinking about it urgent, not urgent, important or not important?
that I was about to answer your question, and I can't answer your question because it's yours, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could tell you what I think, but it doesn't. it shouldn't sway you because you're the one that knows what's urgent, what's non-urgent, what's
Mhm.
important, what's not important.
Well, the great thing is I love it when people actually do try to answer it because then you get these interesting competing agendas, and you get somebody saying, "Well, if I were you," and okay, I like those conversations. I've been thinking about that though from a different perspective. What are some other ways of saying "if I were you"? So the lead into actually offering your opinion, because "if I were you" is a very that's a directive opinion, right? You start off like loose. Okay, it's random. It's an if, but "I were you" is pretty declarative. Like it's like you're telling the person, if you want to be like me, you should do this. It's not like if I wanted to be like you. It's like if you wanted to be like me, you would do it this way. If I were you.
I like to think and say to people, if this was the situation, if it was my situation, if I were in this situation, this is what I might consider. And even then, when you're in the situation, because recently I had that moment of, oh, I'm in this situation now, and there's many more pieces to the puzzle that need to be addressed and considered than when you're just talking about it.
Mhm.
Well, I know you know that. It's just interesting to say it out loud because I finally ended up in a position that I thought, hey, if I was in this position, this is what I would do. Then when you're in the position, it's like, whoa. Before, when I was considering being in this position, I didn't see the hundreds of other minute objects, tasks, distractions that come with being in this position. It's interesting for sure. Gary's with us. He says GM Gary.
Good morning, Gary.
So I thought of both Gary and Rochelle this week.
Mhm.
The postings came out here with them in my district, and there's a job opening at Rochelle's school.
Mm.
I'm not eligible to apply though, so I ignored that. And then I actually saw Gary this week. I saw Gary face to face in real life, and I would say it was time well spent.
Cool.
I don't know how Gary would feel about it, but that's how I felt about it. So nice to have both Gary and Rochelle visiting with us this morning
Absolutely.
on this beautiful Saturday morning over here where I'm at. It's sun shining and it's cool.
Yep.
Rochelle says me either. I'm trying to track how that fits. Me either. Oh,
Oh, not sure about whether it's a good or bad thing.
oh,
You're getting some heat.
that's
You're
okay.
getting just a little bit of heat pushback.
You know what? When you get heat from normal people, it doesn't hurt.
I like that.
Like when Rochelle's going to give me some heat or Gary or yourself, it's like I don't have too many difficulties taking heat from people that I respect. It's an interesting little
Mhm.
concept. But then I think why should I be upset with taking heat from people I don't respect? Oh, Rochelle says she can't apply for the position either.
Oh, I was so wrong on that one.
It's okay.
All
Um,
right.
Rochelle, I was actually a little bit surprised when I saw that posting because the person who's I wonder if you're getting an addition or if the person who's there doing that job's leaving. Because I can't imagine that person would want to leave, but I'm not in that person's position. I don't know what they're experiencing and how they're experiencing it, but I got to tell you, Rochelle. Well, let's just say it out loud. I mean, I'm not. It's not a secret. So at Rochelle's school, there's a posting for special education teacher,
Hmm.
and I was like, I'd apply there if I were allowed to apply there for spec ed. For sure, I would, but I can't. In the first posting, special education positions are only you can only apply to them if you're a current special education teacher. So the circle of oh no, Rochelle says the person doesn't want to do the hour drive anymore. Yeah, well,
Mm.
I don't blame
Hey,
them for that.
been there, didn't want to do that. Yep.
I've been there, didn't want to do that, and actually, I'm in that space again where I might end up having to do that. So
Mm.
it's not a fun space. So you got to find other You got to find the other fun parts, if there are any, to
Mhm.
focus on. But that's too bad, Rochelle. I'm sure you'll get someone. You get someone competent again. I'm sure. Um, and then when I saw Gary, we talked high school. We talked high school. We talked Model UN. Oh, Rochelle, are you interviewing me? Oh, Rochelle, it it says somewhere that only classroom teachers can apply to it, and they would. I don't know what they consider me, but they don't. I'm not. I don't have permission to apply to any spec ed positions. So does it say? It said somewhere. I read it somewhere. It said somewhere classroom teachers are not allowed to apply for special education jobs in this posting. But yeah, I do have my spec ed. I do have my spec ed. Anyway, so yeah, Gary and I talked Model UN. We talked about the politics of high school, and it certainly is interesting. We had some moves too. We had some big changes here in our district with principal movements, and there are some interesting movements at the high school level. Again, we only have 5 high schools, so everybody knows everything about everybody. Oh, Rochelle says not on our posting, only the other two. Really, Rochelle? That's very interesting. I will have to take a look. I will have to take a look. Wouldn't that be crazy if Rochelle and I worked together again? I would buy you a nice big vegan burger and with vegan French fries if we got to work together again.
I think you can only call that a sandwich. I would like to take offense to the fact you called it a burger.
Is a burger not a sandwich?
A burger for me, I'll just say for me, a primary component is animal protein.
Oh,
Yeah, that's just otherwise it's just a sandwich.
but what about like a ham sandwich? Can't call that a hamburger?
Well, then you're mixing like
Well, you said
food.
animal protein, so
Well, it's ham's pork. But
it's
I'm just
animal
saying one of
protein.
the qualifiers to call it a burger. So it's don't not reverse engineering here. Just say if you call it a burger, it has to have animal protein in it. I won't be so narrow-minded as to say it has to be from a cow. Any protein will do unless it's plant-based. Like that's I just I'm being yeah.
I get you.
It can't be
I
can't be
saw
a
a
burger.
great joke the other day. You know, that okay, so Rochelle enjoys the jokes, the joking around here. I saw that meme where the lady's yelling at the cat and the cat's responding with something smart every time. You know the picture, the blonde lady, she looks like she's screaming and she's pointing a finger. Then on the other side is a cat.
I
You
don't
know-
know this one.
Oh, you don't know that one? Okay.
I don't know it.
So anyway, in that meme style, the lady's yelling at the cat about something. He's the cat's eating a burger, I think, or something, and the lady's yelling and she's like, "What are you eating?" And he goes, "Don't worry, it's plant-based." And then at the end, she yells at him again. He says, or she says, I don't know what gender the cat is. The cat's like, "It's from a meat plant." So it started off with like a plant-based food, and then it came back with from a meat plant. That's what kind of plant-based food it is. So I'm over here laughing because I like meat, and probably all the vegans and stuff are upset, but I upset people all the time, so it doesn't matter whether you're vegan or not.
Nah, I don't know. I think they're a peaceful lot. They got their vegetables. I think we can agree to be at the same table. Um, Politics aside, I'll just choose to leave it at food preference. It's a food preference. I know I get the ethical. I get the ethical for sure. Um, Environmental. Geez, the more I said it, maybe I should start considering a veggie burger. I don't
Ugh.
know. Oh, I know. I know. That would be the death knell for my culinary Fantasticness. You imagine we do I throw that at you. I come for the Foodapalooza.
And we
I'm
do a
like,
vegan.
Chids, I'm vegan now. I'm vegan now, buddy.
Okay, well, I mean, that could happen, right?
Would
And
that be a deal breaker?
well, I would say to you,
Would
no,
is
I
this like
mean,
is this like going back to would you have a similar response? Would you would you have a similar response when we first met? Remember you said like what would it what would I do? What would I do if you started posting smack about me online? And my first assumption would be, well, there's something mentally not well with you. So
mhm.
if I roll up and suddenly say, "Yo, I'm I'm switching to veganism," you're like, "Oh, let's get you help, buddy. Let's get you some help."
Well, for sure, I would be like, there'd be a lot of questions,
Mhm.
right? There'd be a lot of questions. Then there would be, well, did you do your homework? Did you figure out a bunch of vegan places to go eat here? Because I'm certainly not going to do that. So,
Right, right. That
um,
makes sense.
but we almost went to a vegan place. Remember the burger that looks
We
so good?
we
Odd burger or
tried.
something?
We got
Yeah.
tried. We got bogged down going to the hot dog place. It was the meat that kept us from making it to the vegan place.
It wasn't
Is
meant to
is
be.
that place still open?
I don't know for sure. I suspect it is because it's in an area of town where there's going to be a lot of, I'm making all kinds of friggin' assumptions here, but I think it's the right place in the city
Hmm.
to make money from people who would be interested in their food.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um,
Understood.
and you know what? Their ads are fantastic because you and I were willing to go give it a try.
Their food looked good. It
Hmm.
it it did look good. You got it. I got to look it up. Yeah, we tried. We
Odd
were driving
Burger.
across
It's called
town. What is
Odd
it?
Burger. Odd Burger. Have you tried it, Rochelle? Odd Burger in Uptown Waterloo? I can't bring myself to eat a vegetarian or vegan burger. I can't do it because I want the taste. Like, I want the taste of the beef. Where's the beef? I want the taste of the beef. Um,
Hmm.
and another thing too, because I'm weird with money. If you buy it for me, I'll eat it. But I'm not paying for it. Like that's like
Hmm.
whenever I go to a restaurant and there's a burger with that comes with peanut butter on it, I always want to try it, but I don't want to pay for it. So if you want to buy me a burger with peanut butter on it, I'll try it, but I don't want it to be like out of my pocket. At this moment, I feel that way. I don't know. Maybe if I was, the other thing too is when I go to a restaurant and I'm hungry, I don't want to experiment. I want to just eat. But maybe the trick is to go get a burger with peanut butter on it when I'm full and I'm not really hungry. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to blow my meal on this because I, I'm not. It's not dinner. I don't know. I don't know. It's just weird things in my head. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Did you find Odd Burger online?
I did. I
Okay.
did. It's funny. The pictures I'm okay with, but I'm not down with calling something a Vopper. You know,
It's called a Whopper?
of of a Vapa. Yeah, I think vegetarian or vegan Whopper, right? Or the bake unfamous milk, like BAC uppercase U, lowercase n. It's you know what? All good, all good. I do want to try it. I do want to try it. We tried to get there. Um, I don't have any immediate plans to sort of move to veganism. I know, the more omnivorous I am, it just means choices and opportunity. I get it. Me having that, I'm not having to sign a waiver that I'm giving up on my animal products. I get that. I get that. I get all that. So, um, and this opportunity, hey, maybe it'll if we broaden some of those things and when we kind of post it out to some of the other networks who wants to come for Foodapalooza. Rochelle, I don't know. Does Gary knows about this? I don't know if Rochelle knows about this. Does Rochelle know about the Foodapalooza? I don't know if Rochelle knows this. So just briefly,
Rochelle's
um,
not been to Odd Burger.
I've
Rochelle,
not
you
been to
gotta get
Odd
to Odd
Burger.
Burger.
So couple times a year, usually. We're sort of hitting the twice a year. I'll come to Waterloo. Chids will come to my neck of the woods in York Region, and we'll set up just a bit of a food crawl. We'll sit, we'll chat, and we kind of have two different crews of people that have been connected with us in our podcasting and education. And um, there's a book club that me and Chids are a part of. So we've got just these circles of connections, and we'll put it out to them and say, "Hey, we're doing a Foodapalooza. You're welcome to come along." We'll sometimes solicit ideas from other people, but most times it's me and him just saying, "Here's where you want to eat. You're welcome to come with." And we'll bring a little table and our chairs and all the accoutrement, napkins, drinks, and we'll just sit outside the place of business and have a meal. And we've done this. This is all weather. We've done it in the rain. We've done it in the colder weather. We've done it in the summer. And it's been cool. It's been cool to sort of sit and break bread, as they say, and talk stuff, talk about life and being a dad and education. So when I say Foodapalooza, it's just it's that. It's a little bit of a food crawl. So at the next one, we'll figure out. Well, hey, the next one, if you're down this way, I can take you to Mr. Puff's, the local, see if you like it. Rookie move, you're muted. It's okay. Hey, so funny, I did that 3 times in a Zoom rehearsal that I was in the other night, and they're just laughing on the other end. I'm like, "Damn." It just pops up. Yeah, it just pops up.
So there has to be a saying for that. I know, like you just said, rookie move, but we spent so much time online during COVID, and we still mute ourselves and forget to unmute ourselves. There's got to be a term for that. It's got to be in the Urban Dictionary or something.
Just a forgetting?
Like the process of, yeah, forgetting to unmute yourself, even though we've been experiencing the online for many years.
Mhm.
Do you
We'll leave
remember?
that
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we'll leave that to our creative team to come up with jargon for that.
Okay. Do you remember pre-COVID talking about using this type of technology that is now so common, yet school boards are still maybe not on board with using it anymore?
Well, it's tough, right? Because you and I were already using it for this podcast. We started this pre-COVID, and we were already doing the video conversation, kind of like we were already in that zone. So I think we were already familiars with the tools and what it like the decorum that and logistics that come along with it, right? Between the timing, the give and take, like the rules of social engagement in this space are slightly different than when you actually are face to face. Like you kind of do have to, I mean, because so much of it is audio, some of it is video, but I don't know if I often use video to queue up my responses. So I'm not using the visual as often to queue up how I'm talking to you. I find that when I'm face to face, I'm taking in the visual information and audio. I find one of the things in this zone is that they're separated. They're kind of separated because the fidelity of the conversation is always crisp because I have the headphones on. So it doesn't matter if I turn away, if I body language turn away, your sound doesn't sound more distant, thus indicating to my brain and my body, oh, you've looked away from the person. You need to look back. When the sound is always around you, when it's immersive, you forget some of the body, like the echolocation and the um, what are those called? Oh, I always forget the word. Prior, prior, prior perception. Don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's that sense of your body in the natural world. Are you sitting? What are the indicators that tell your brain that you're sitting? Can you feel the breeze coming by? What's the sound coming from here? I know in my community classrooms, proprioception can sometimes be uh, underdeveloped. So coordination, some of the students I work with, they have coordination issues, mobility issues because they don't have that um, that gyroscopic understanding of, am I sitting right now? Am I too close to that table? What direction is the sun coming from? So in these spaces here, some of that sensual information is not accurate. So you have to build a different fluency. And I think one of the fortunate things is that you and I were exploring this. We were already exploring what does it mean to have a great audio conversation, audio only conversation, even before that. Like we you and I were very good candidates to start using this kind of technology for learning, whether we liked it or didn't like it. We were very good. I think we were already at top of game relative to other instructors that had to do it. Back to your first kind of observation, though, I don't really remember how I used this medium prior to doing podcasting, and I know it existed prior to that. I have no clue. I feel like I've just kind of like slowly grown, comfort zone, comfort zone. Like I've just kind of like moved along with it. I don't feel like I've ever hit a bump as far as trying to figure it out. I don't think I've ever hit a wall as in I just can't do this. I just feel like it feels like kind of a natural progression. And I really don't have a love it or hate it kind of like mindset to it. I just kind of do it. In much the same way like you and I kind of at one point I would have said we chase ourselves, we chase each other on different channels because we connect on how many different channels? Polo, email, text, Insta,
Facebook, Insta,
Facebook, here,
X.
X.
I've got 7.
Yeah, 7
Oh,
and
telephone, actual
telephones
telephone.
sometimes. I would say, yeah, that's the bottom. We don't call each other much. But we send a hell of a lot. Like we've spent more time videoing than I would ever call someone on, right?
Mhm.
But just being multi-channel, multilingual, multi-channel that way, or multi-fluency as far as communication goes, um, it feels very natural. It feels very natural, and it's like in my mind, it's like you kind of have to be because there's no such thing as a proprietary method of communicating anymore. And I think you and I kind of said, "What the f? We're going to do what we want." When we switch to this mode, let's do something else. Hey, are you even posting up our episodes to Apple anymore?
No.
So there we go. So we've seamlessly said this is still a podcast, and yet the content only exists in this space. We just kind of move there. I'm not going to go back and watch any of these episodes. I'm not. I'm going to bring up topics from previous, but I'm not going to. I got a prompt from Podbean the other day. Like so here's the thing. Here's something interesting. Like anything I say is interesting, but this is interesting. It is connected. And then I'll close this one up because I've said too much shit. So I have a ton of content from Chasing Squirrels. Rochelle, Gary, this is before we met. My podcast before I connected with Chids was called Chasing Squirrels. So um, I was intentionally talking with, I would say 80% of my conversations were with teachers in my school board. At the time, nobody was doing it. Like it just, I kind of thought to myself, I want to have more, I want to have access to individuals that I think are fascinating. So at the time, I was like on Twitter, connecting, like using it really, really sort of maximizing my presence on Twitter to get conversations. I would just cold call someone. I would contact them like, hey, I love what you're doing with your website right now. Can we sit down and have a conversation? And I would like to put a podcast. And at that time, so this is like over a decade ago, locally, people were like, what's a podcast? And then they're like, why would you want to put something about education? Now, what I'd already seen is that there wasn't a lot of Ontario content. There was a lot of American podcast, some Canadian, not much going on in Ontario. In a decade, everything has changed. I mean, when podcasting makes it to be one of your possible culminating activities in class, like it's like we're ready for a different activity, basically. Just like back in the day when teachers say, okay, let's make a Facebook profile for this course. Like it's on its way out when it's that uncool. Anyways, I get a prompt from Podbean, and it was Podbean all of a sudden. So that's where Chasing Squirrels is housed. That's the server where it's stored. I haven't added any content to it in years, but I pay every year to have it stored there. I'm not paying anymore. So I'm going to maybe just let it go and let the content go. Just gone. It'll be gone. Because if I'm not paying, then it doesn't feed it to Apple Podcasts anymore. Now, short of the episodes being downloaded and placed somewhere else, that's entirely possible. But I'm at the point where I'm not going to pay anymore just to have it sitting there. I don't feel like I need to stay connected to that content anymore. And it's kind of a little, and then I thought about it. I'm like, wow, that's a really interesting feeling to have. But not surprising to me that I kind of feel that way. I'm okay to sort of move on. And if somebody happens to find some rogue prodigal episode at some point, fair enough. We can talk about that. But yeah, this has got me thinking about like how we've shifted here to a highly disposable version of our podcast. It really is. It's sort of like we've moved completely into message in a bottle kind of podcast. Find it if you can. We might still be there if you come back and look, but the stuff could be shut down as well by the time you catch on. It's kind of whack. It's kind of whack. It lit me up that I actually felt that disconnect to my old content, and not in a negative way, just like that was then. I've moved on.
So I got a couple of things to say connected to this.
Okay.
That is wild that, you know, you've come to a place where you're like, yeah, that information's housed there. I used to pay for you to take care of my stuff. I'm not paying you anymore. Do you not? I'm sure you must have it on your hard drive because you took it from something and put it there.
Maybe, but I've
Okay.
also done a lot of cleaning out. I think
Oh,
I have pieces of all of them in my Google Drive, my personal
okay.
Google Drive. But one step is like I'm not getting rid of it just because I hadn't even considered the fact that I had backups as the reason for getting rid of it. My starting point was I don't want to pay someone else to hold it in their bucket anymore.
Hmm.
And I'm not leveraging it. I'm not trying to get any more clout on it. I'm not pursuing those conversations. So then I say to myself, you could probably just let it go now. Just let it go. And the process of letting go would be first and foremost not paying for it anymore.
Hmm.
Just shutting it down and let the roots kind of like shrivel up and move on. So, and I'm not going to listen to my episodes on my Google Drive either. And I'm just as likely to erase that stuff if I feel like I need more space. So, yeah, it's just a moving on. That's the best way I can say it. It's just a moving on.
Gotcha. Yesterday, oh, so okay, the two things I wanted to kind of to bring up. Yesterday, I was I don't know what time it was, 4:15, 4:20, sitting on the couch, and I had a memory of coming home from school on a Friday, just sitting down, just like that first sit down of the day where you're like, "Oh," and then remembering that you used to call me on Fridays after school. So I think you'd be driving home from work and you'd call me like, "Hey, how's it going? Happy Friday."
Yep.
And I was like, "Wow, times have changed, right?" Like we communicate that in other ways now with other technology, but yeah, the phone would ring. I'm like, "It's Clough." And everybody in the house would be like, "Who's calling you?" I'm like, "Oh, it's Chris." And then it became normal that, oh, Chris calls on Friday after school sometimes. So I actually thought about calling you yesterday after school, but I
That would have
didn't.
been cool.
But
That
who
would
knows
have been
what
cool.
might happen. And then the other thing is there's this one guy in the district. I don't see him much anymore, but whenever I would see him, he would always, always comment on the podcast. He would say, like, he'd look around to the people around us. He'd be like, "Do you know Roland has a podcast?" And they would look at him like, "Oh, frig." Like they were like, "Oh, this guy's getting lit up again. He's gonna talk." And so kind of people are looking, I'm like, "Oh no, let's not go down this road." And even I'm like, dude, every time I see you, you proudly announce I have a podcast. And I don't want to, like, it's not on all your favorite streaming things and stuff, because that's what happens these days. People create a podcast like, "Oh, you can find it everywhere." Where's your podcast, Roland? It's on YouTube. Where else can we find it? Nowhere else. Like, it's the opposite of what's happening today. You don't want to tell us where it is? Not really, because like it's kind of a long story and you're not going to go there anyway. Like, it's awesome because I've got all my numbers right there in front of me. I'm like, yeah, 98% of the people I talk to don't even care. 99.3% aren't going to go to the site. Like, I got the numbers. So why are we even talking about it? And Roland's got a podcast. Can you believe that? Roland, every Saturday, he gets his headset on, he talks to a guy, he's got a podcast. He's all over the internet. Where can we find it? No, you don't. It's on
Remember,
YouTube.
yeah, remember when that used to be important in your sign off? You can find
Here?
this pod. You can
Oh,
find this podcast if you want to listen to other episodes of Chasing Squirrels. You can find them anywhere good podcasts are found: iTunes, Google Podcasts.
so
Bach.
now I laugh when other people have
Oh,
podcasts and they do you can find us on every platform. And I'm like, but I won't,
again,
because I don't listen to your podcast.
friend to all is friend to none, and I'm not going to go looking because it's funny. It's so rare. This is kind of funny, eh? It's so rare for me to intentionally go looking for content now, and I think this is the um the subs only kind of lifestyle here. Like the algorithm pushes so much content possibility at me that I really have to do the work to get outside that bubble and ask someone directly, "Hey, like, what are you listening to these days?" Like you have to jump the shark. You have to That's because even to send a DM somewhere, the algorithm's listening. So you're going to get mathematically possible suggestions from the system as opposed to something that's lighting up a human. Good example of this is so my connection with the writers community of York Region, which is just a local writers group. I met a few people from there, and I don't know how the conversation started, but it did. And we are talking about, oh, I know what it was. I posted up on Facebook that I was just looking to give away some poetry books, some ones that I'm just not connecting with. Someone from the writers group saw that and said, "I'll take them. I'm just starting to get into poetry and I really don't know what I like." So I'm like, "Okay, cool." So we met up in town and they brought a book and they said, "You know what? I didn't have any poetry," because that's what I was actually asking for, just to trade poetry for poetry. "I don't have any poetry, but I got this other book called Rabbits by Terry Miles. I'm almost done." Like, they brought it to show it to me. Hold, Jake, what do you need, man? I was checking if we had more Rice Krispies. No, we only have Cheerios. So enjoy the Cheerios, bro. Okay. Yeah. If you're craving the cereal, yeah, just start with the small box. So they brought the book and I read the first part of it, and on the inside of the jacket, it mentioned that this book was a fully fleshed story that actually came from the podcast. I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." So in the book, I found, well, haha, rabbit hole. And I haven't even made it past the first chapter in the book anymore because I've been listening to the podcast. So the thing that the book was actually based on. The book itself, I think you might like it. So the basic premise is that there's this now online, entirely immersive. This is an MMORPG, like a massive role-playing game. The narrator in the podcast is talking about how their friend has just gone missing, but they found out that their friend was playing this game. Now, the game has been played since 1959, but they think that this game in some form has been played for hundreds and hundreds of years before that. So you got this kind of weird kind of historical context, and then it's a game that moved online eventually. The game is only known by its number. So it's sort of like number one, number two, number three. And right now it's on iteration 9 in our current timeline. The local people that are playing it, they call it rabbits. They call the game rabbits. So that's the thing. Basic storyline, friend goes missing. Last thing that this investigator knows is that they were playing rabbits. So that's the beginning of the rabbit hole. And it's well crafted. It's really interesting. It's funny how the book jacket has created a rabbit hole for me because I would have never known about this if I hadn't had the human interaction. But that's the necessity now to get outside the algorithmic bubble to find out what people truly like, not the stuff that they're liking, online that ends up feeding your own algorithm and narrowing your silo and everyone's reading the same damn thing all the time or consuming the same damn thing. So I like this. I like the whole this idea that our excessive use of these digital platforms for communication, you get good at it, but it still doesn't trade out meeting up with once in a while. Like I think I'm about as good as I need to get using these platforms. I think in some ways using these platforms has actually made me a little bit better face to face. For me, I think it's actually made me better face to face. Um, that's for another episode though. But I like your starter questions like what was life before? What was it like? Remembering using these tools. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can unearth that. Can you? Can you actually
Yeah,
like
I I remember, like, an exhilaration. I remember, like, an
oh
excitement. Like, because and I've said this story, oh my god, fuck, number 187,
gather around. Here we
231.
go.
Yeah, like, I've talked about this before where right before the pandemic hit Canada, right before we locked everything down, I remember saying in January and February of, was it 2020? I remember talking to one of my teaching partners. Sorry, wrong words. A teacher who also taught the same grade as me. We weren't teaching partners. Great person, but we didn't work collaboratively. She was here and I was here. I remember talking about tools. Uh, and I was 110% blended learning. So all my students were very capable of using technology, of using some of the apps. Like everything was blended in my class, right? We were having guest speakers come in via Google Hangouts and stuff. So it's like I remember talking to this person, a couple of people joined our conversation about some of these tools, and they're like, what's the point? Like the kids are in front of you. You don't need Flipgrid. That's what it was called then. Now it's called Flip. You don't need Flipgrid to do, you know, this type of assessment, that type of assessment. You ask the kid in front of you, and I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. Like, so then I would give the reasons why I would use it and the benefits to the kids and how preparing them for the digital world and blah blah blah. And then March comes, it's like we're locked down. Everybody turn on your computers. Everything's happening digitally. And I remember being like, okay, like there was some angst for certain aspects of it, but generally speaking, I'm like, oh, you're telling me I'm going to be doing Google Hangouts with my kids? That's okay. Oh, who needs help with logins and passwords? Well, not my kids because they're constantly using this stuff. They all know their logins and their passwords. They all know how to use these tools. And then for me, while everybody was chasing families and kids saying, why aren't you online? When I was chasing, I was like, Mom and Dad, Jimmy knows how to use this stuff. He's been using it all year. So get Jimmy out of his bedroom, get him on the call with me. Jimmy, I'm going to say this, maybe it's not the right thing to say. Jimmy's just being a jerk because Jimmy knows how to use everything because I've observed Jimmy use it since September. So when Jimmy tells you he doesn't know how to use it, he's messing with you. He knows. I've observed it. I've reported to you. Um, so while everybody else was struggling, my class was, damn, we don't really want to do this, but we do know how. you know, can we just go back to class? And it's like, I remember that. I I remember that like it was yesterday. I can tell you where I was in the building. It was lunchtime. Like it was, why do you waste your time, Roland? I'm like, it's not a waste of time. Like these kids are learning. The grade 4 teachers never complained after my grade 3s left me to go to grade 4 when they pull out a Chromebook and they're like, I need you to. And the kids are like, we know. I just saved that grade 4 teacher a lot of heartache and angst, weeks of training saved. Stop wasting time with the tool. They know how to use it. Go back to the content. What is the curriculum you're trying to cover? What's the pedagogy? What's the approach? You can focus on all those things because the tool's not the distraction anymore. I mean, it always is, but they know how to use the tool in an effective way that you're not wasting all your time training with the tool. And so anyway, connecting, I remember before it became common, it was exhilarating. Not that it isn't anymore, but it was just this like, kids, on Thursday at 2 o'clock, we're having a guest speaker. Um, they're so, like an athlete working to become an Olympian. They're going to visit our classroom. They are, yeah, through the computer. So let's come up with some questions. Let's learn how to properly deal with a situation like this. Like it was, man, I loved it. I loved it. And now it's different now. It's different. That same teacher that was telling me what's the point, by the end of the school year 2020, she was like, "Oh, I love Flipgrid. I'm like a Flipgrid master." And I'm just looking at her like, "Uh-huh. You're a Flipgrid master, huh?" Yeah,
Flip's been banned in my board.
oh, has it? Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know if it is or not in mine because I
yeah.
haven't used it in years, but interesting. Very
Mhm.
interesting. So what we do here, it's awesome that it's just one other way we communicate. It's really cool that we're able to capture our communication in a way that hopefully will still be around if and when our kids decide that they'd like to dip their toes into the 293 episodes that we put together. I think number one is not on YouTube, but number
It
two,
isn't.
okay.
It got lost. I remember you tried. You're like, I don't know where it went, but I will say, at some point, and maybe this is just because this pod and Rochelle Gary. I don't know if you know this. Well, maybe you have noticed this. So those drawings that I do at the end, Rochelle and Gary, like when I do a scribble, I've been doing that since the beginning. So, the fact that we're at 293, it does mean that there's 293 drawings. Chids has about, I don't know, maybe 200 of them, maybe less than that. Because one of the last times I came for a Foodapalooza, I'm like, here, bud, check these out. And it was like, what? I'm like, yeah, just like check them out. I brought the basket of these like drawings. And then I have ones that are, for example, like the ones I'm doing right now, I guess at some point, like they're inside my journal. So I'd have to cut them out and take them out. But those drawings and the conversations and the Foodapalooza it's the ecosystem, and this is something that I've really come to appreciate because I have no happiness. It brings me no joy, zero joy. And I think this has happened a while ago. Zero joy about this medium. I don't, it doesn't, I'm very neutral about it. If the conversation doesn't, if I'm not interested in the conversation, I don't care if it's face to face or digital. I really don't. I just will not. I go gut. And is it right for the gut? No, this is still right for the gut because I enjoy our conversations and I enjoy you. So it keeps it anchored me to this. And you're in Waterloo, I'm in Newmarket. Like there isn't, this has to be one of the elements that we support and feed if we're choosing to support and feed our friendship. Like it's inseparable. However, what I love is understanding that connection, conversation, and community can be connected by an ecosystem of tools. And you and I would not be as close or connected if we weren't using 7 different platforms. And that's a bit of a mind blower. That's what's really exciting to me. That idea is really exciting to me because I've started to understand that, and I would be able to tell you, I could probably categorize, which is kind of weird, what tool, what tool, how that tool helps me see parts of you. So what is it that I feel connected to about you through Instagram, through Facebook, TikTok? Oh, TikTok too. There's another one, which is like really low level. We've done zero together on TikTok, really, other than send a wave and maybe share like two food videos. But I'm loving this idea right now of the ecosystem of communication and how face-to-face conversation is just one information emotionally rich and dense form. I really do believe that if you are nurturing these other forms of communication, whether it's texting, like your accountability, I feel accountability to you. I think because the way our personalities work, it's leveled up because of the diversity of tools that we have. And it's not an excessive amount of connection. I wouldn't say that I feel like, because we don't sometimes respond to stuff either, and we forget stuff. Like we forget stuff that like, one of us sends a polo and the other person's responding sometime at text like, "Yeah, I think he sent 2 polos. I think I only listened to 1." On we go. It's like, on we go. But the ecosystem, I like this. And I think that, where my current evangelism would be if individuals are talking about like what's the tool, I would say use them all. Use them, you use them all. You use them all. You bend that tool to accommodate your specific personality so that when people are looking at your content, not necessarily having a conversation directly with you, but when they're looking at your content, they could say to themselves, "You know what? On Facebook, there's a whole lot of writing. That's really interesting. On Instagram, it's photos, that they can kind of, because I think what we're doing is yes, they're all projections, but we're sort of, I think there's a cooler authenticity than sort of just housing it all in one place because we are diverse, right? Like that's complicated, diverse. So that's, if I would say the gift of stepping back into this medium, it was just that bump to say, use it and use Facebook and use Twitter and use X and use TikTok and use Instagram. Just keep using them. If it's helping you build better relationships, you feel good about it, keep using them. If it's feeding you, keep using them. I love that. The ecosystem of digital communication. Another TED Talk brought to you by my second large coffee this morning.
I haven't had coffee yet.
Bro, come on.
I
Come
I
on.
have another call to make at 10. So when
Okay,
we're done this cast, I'm gonna grab my coffee. So I'm
good.
pacing myself, I think.
Going back to see, I think I did a drawing of coffee in here. That is the one kind of neat thing that there is in this book. I can go back. I did have a memory of wanting to see a couple pictures again. I may ask you just to send me a text shot from some of there. There were a couple that kind of popped up into my mind. I'm like, oh,
So
what was that?
recent Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, no,
I
no, go ahead. No.
I was just gonna say, yeah, you gave me a bin full of pictures, and I went through it, and then I messaged you. I had major feels going through those images because
Mhm.
they some of them I was like, "What is this?" Like, as soon as I saw the image, it reminded me of Conversation, and then it's like season 3, episode, 12. I'm like, "What?" It was mind-blowing. Um, oh, Gary says, "It is what brings me back, the real free-flowing conversation."
Mhm.
Oh, yes, Gary was talking about some of the, uh some of the reasons why he spends some time here on Saturdays with us.
Mm.
And I was listening, right? Like I was paying close attention, but at the same time, I was like, Gary, it's, Okay, great. I love it, but it's not going to last. And I don't say that in a negative way. I just mean over the years, we've had many different people spend time with us on Saturdays, and it's been great. But you and I, we're not living for that. Hey, people, we love you. Come check us out, listen,
Mhm,
take what you can from the convo. But we're not, Chris and I don't, like when we finish on when we're on the off ramp, we're not like, oh, nobody came today to hang out with us. Like, it's a bonus having you here, but we're not doing it for you. We're not doing it for people to come and hang out. Like, I don't know how else to say it, and I hope I'm not being disrespectful. I'm not trying. That's not my intent is that what you and I do here is important for our friendship. It's important for our um like our learning, our reflection, how we move forward, looking back, and all that stuff is so awesome that we're just not in a space where like we need 100 people to listen today. Like, we're just not, that's not what any of this is for or about.
I think Gary kinda touched on a similar mindset.
I
Put
will,
the
but I'm
put
putting this up for the whole world to see.
nice. That stands for Roland and Clough, so that's actually
I love that.
2
Season
2
7,
coffees.
episode 28,
Yeah,
293.
let me
Gary
write that
owes
down.
Roland and Chris a
Yeah,
coffee.
Roland Clough, yeah.
Okay,
So
Roland.
it's what brings me back, the real flowing conversation. So I love because Gary's centering this in his experience. So I'm gonna take this as Gary's here for his own reasons as well.
Mhm,
So, at some point, it reminds me of the ed camps. I think there's an element of ed camp that you and I sort of bring to this. So, the good ed camps that I've been at is that you're able to come upon a conversation, sit and listen for a while, and then leave whenever you want to, right? Your choice was to go to that school to sign up for that session, and then you get this circle technology is about the topics that are discussed at this ed camp are right because of the topics that the group wants to talk about. Anybody that's in the circle are the right people to be there because they've chosen to be in the circle to sit and talk. And if you come up, the only prerequisite is that, you're sort of respectful. And if asked to, you'll participate to whatever your fullest capacity is. You don't have to stay. You're welcome to vote with your feet and move on to the next circle. I think this pod has become that. So in a very respectful way, of course, if someone comes and listens and is contributing and being a part of the conversation, or even listening in and leaving for their own reasons, um, we can't ignore the fact that we're putting this out for public consumption. Like we can't be so on the nose to say we don't expect people to listen, because if we really, really were sort of flexing that, you and I would just stay in our own private channels. So we're aware that sort of putting this content out there is for other people's consumption. Is it the driving factor? No. It really is just the roundup, the coming back to conversation, the impulse and compulsion just to talk about the week and to connect the dots. The discipline, as in meeting up as regularly as our lives allow, being rigorous with some of our philosophical kind of approach, our inquiry kind of approach, looking at the technical content technical content of our school boards and make sure that we're sort of adhering and using the language there, decoding it, synthesizing, kind of putting it back out, humanizing it, if you will. So there are a lot of sort of layers to that. But you're right. Um, been doing podcasting. I've been reflecting in public long enough now, both in this form, even the poetry that I put out there, and my ratio of what I put out relative to what comes back as a conversation is like 100 to 1. It really is 100 to 1. I keep putting it out there because I like just building my body of knowledge and creativity. So even if when it's just you and I talking, I'm still growing as a communicator, which I have is very useful in my, you know, theater life and my poet life and my teacher life. Like there's a connectivity and it spirals up for me. So there's a nice bit of, I think, a reasonable amount of selfishness that meeting up with you also improves improves my communication skills. So back to what you're saying about it being, I don't think you said rude, but sort of like just, slightly rude saying that audience doesn't matter. I think the audience doesn't matter to the beginning of what we do because we want to just do this kind of format. It does matter. They matter if they choose to make themselves matter. As in Gary and Rochelle and other people that have jumped into like, hey, I want to add something here. And we've done a good job, I think, of building mattering and belonging into this for anyone that does come in. Because if they're in the chats, you're putting up some of their stuff. So they're automatically kind of woven into our conversation. There's a limitation to that because we said we're not having guests. We've had one guest
Hmm.
back in season 1 or season 2 when I was at a workshop, that one guest.
You were
That's
in
it.
Kitchener, actually.
Yeah, I was at one
Yeah,
of the Google camps in Kitchener. So
that was awesome. Tell the story for Gary and Rochelle. I don't think they've ever heard it, and whoever else would like to.
I think I was presenting on podcasting.
Oh,
I was
okay.
doing a Google session on podcasting, and it was a Saturday morning, and it was like, "Are we going to make this work?" I don't know. I said, "Well, I'll try and reach out," and I just sat down in the hallway. I had my laptop. I was just sitting against one of the walls, and
Mhm.
I think mid conversation, it would be cool to go back and look at that just to see how did it play out. Because I'm sitting there on my laptop, and someone's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" They're like, "Are you doing the session on podcasting?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm actually doing another podcast right now." They're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Hey, come and have a seat." So they sat down and then they got to meet you and there was a little bit of conversation. It's like, okay, see you later. Yeah, see you later in your session. So it was funny. It was completely impromptu. Um, but again, we didn't invite a guest in the same way, my kids, your kids, they crash our party frequently on Saturday mornings. And you kind of pause for a second, like, yeah, sorry, buddy, we don't have any more Rice Krispies. You got to have Cheerios. So we let life interrupt. That's one of the key tenets of this podcast. Life has to be able to interrupt because that's our life. This is just part of our life. So
You put it well. You explained it well. It's people are welcome to join us. It's a public place. I push it
mhm.
out on the social, say, hey, we're starting, come on in. I think I've done a pretty good job of including the voices of the people who come and hang out with us. If they have something to say, I mean, I've invited them, short of them being completely rude, which nobody has been. I'm happy to share their positions in the posts. I say, come on in, participate if you want. Um, but you're right. At the end of the day, it's we're not here. We're here to do a thing. If other people join us, great. And if they don't, that's okay too. It's not going to stop us, and it's not why we started. And I think that's important. I think it's just important to know what you're doing, why you're doing it. So even if people start a podcast and like, yeah, I want millions of people to come listen to me, that's my intention. Well, you've made your intention known. You know what your goal is, you know what you're trying to do. It's, very difficult to make that happen, but you can. Um, we're just not there anymore. And when I say anymore, I shouldn't speak for you. When I had my podcast, Roland Chidiac Connects, I wanted people to listen. Like I wanted people to listen because I was putting out I was putting out content around the why of what people do. So I wanted people to hear those stories. I wanted people to know what got someone to enter into a space and do amazing work in that space. It would hopefully motivate others, and it would, provide a model for them to chase what is it they want to do, and really focus on that the why is important. And for a number of reasons, that podcast ended, but I still felt that I wanted to operate in this space and communicate in this way. And that's when you and I talked about, hey, you want to do our own thing? You were still heavy into squirrels, so I realized you had your thing going. But I was like, I'm done with Roland Chidiac Connects, but I don't think I'm done with podcasting. And, luckily, thankfully, you were like, "Yeah, man, let's do it. Let's do it and see what happens." And here we are in the seventh season, number 293. That's pretty cool. Rochelle says she appreciates the opportunity to contribute to the conversation and to hear others' perspectives. And we're glad that this works for you right now, right? Because it's not going to last forever. Ramona is our fan club president. I haven't heard from Ramona in a long time. That's not a criticism. I'm just saying she's living her life. She's doing her thing. Carlos used to Carlos would watch our episodes at school on the Bright Links in the morning before school as he was prepping for the day. So, I one day I was at his where he used to work. He doesn't work there anymore. He worked there last year and the year before. I'd go into the school and the principal would say to me, "Hey man, I was listening to you this morning." I was like, "What?" Because I went into Carlos's room to ask him about something and you were on the Bright Links talking with your buddy on your podcast. I was like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Yeah, Carlos will have it on in the mornings. I guess he can't watch it on the weekend, so he's prepping for school and he's got the podcast up and he's listening." It Those stories are cool. It's cool to hear those stories. It's cool that people have spent time with us. If it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. People are living their lives just like you and I are living our lives. I'm sure, some people would be like, "Well, if you did it on a Thursday at 6 p.m., I'd listen every week." But we don't. We do it on Saturday or
A
Sunday morning.
lot of people have said stuff like that. That if we made it more convenient to their life, that they would listen right away. And it's a beautiful little bit of reflective practice that we also embrace, is that, well, if you could actually get your life around our life, like just that tension, we're not asking anyone to meet us on our terms. We're just flexing our terms. If you want to be here, you can. You're welcome to, right? If you can't, that's cool. Yeah. There were a lot of people. Oh, yeah. If you're going to be doing that live thing on Saturday mornings, if you could just like do it Friday night, or I'm like, it ain't happening. It ain't happening. Or I won't commit to that schedule. It could happen because you and I agree, like we'll meet up Friday night, but we definitely don't have an alternative meetup day. Like if we can't meet Saturdays, one of the other truths is like it might be the following Saturday,
Hmm.
right? It's not like we say if not then when. We don't have that. We just negotiate it when it happens. So
I would love to check out the art for today.
oh,
Oh, it's the cogs.
we never got to that, but I imagine there's gonna be some polo conversation. Cog life. The
Cog life.
beauty, the beauty of cog life. We can we can clamor and scream and fish shake about agency, and we need what we need, and I have to have what I have, and recognize me as an individual and my contribution. There's also some sweetness in being a part of a system and being a cog in that system, being supported by other cogs. So um, that was our on ramp. Sorry, folks. I don't know if we're going to make it back to it, but um, reflective practice moment. What is the beauty inherent in cog life?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get deep, but
Mm-mm.
some people don't want to be a cog
Mm-hmm.
in the machine. But as you put it to me this morning, there are lots of benefits. If you can accept the fact that you're a cog in the machine, there can be a lot of benefits to that.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing where you belong, staying in your lane, so to speak. And I appreciate it because I've been struggling with that idea. The way you put it today, though, it's going to cause me to reflect on it for the next little bit, and probably will help me. It's information that's going to be positive for me, not negative.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that. So
Part of it is the school board says it to us. The school board says it quite clearly, at least mine does. Make sure you take care of your wellness. Take care of you. Now, from the system level, system doesn't care if you're healthy. The system has tools to deal with you whether you're healthy or not healthy. Other humans might care if you're healthy and, up to your job. So when the system says, pay attention to your wellness, there can sometimes be an immediate kind of like reaction, like, really, you're doing all this stuff and you expect me to take, like, you can make it about those limitations that you perceive, or you can just take it as an advisement that there are things that are available to you so that you can feel tools, strategies, resources, benefits that are available to you that can help you to realize that you should be getting more from your job than what you're putting in the least the same. But there are other things, benefits that you can receive. That's why they call them benefits. There's benefits that you can receive that remind you that in order to be well, you need to withdraw more than you deposit. So I think that's one of the benefits of Cog Life, that collectively we've built up these tools, strategies, and benefits that as a collective we need to be using. Need a day off for wellness, take your day off. You need to get your teeth fixed, get your teeth fixed. You need to get a massage, if your benefits provided, do it. Like, just these things are here for us, and the board says it. I just don't know if we often hear it. I'm not saying be irresponsible, but when they say make sure you take care of your wellness, it includes withdrawing more than you're depositing. Still do a good job, still be awesome for your kids, still be a calm, collective, creative colleague, but take more than you give. And there still will be extra because there's so many people that just don't and will say, but what am I supposed to do? I'm like, use your benefits. Start with your benefits. So, Cog Life, baby.
On that note,
May the 4th.
May the 4th be with you too, Rochelle and
Yeah.
Gary and anybody else who's listening. Thanks for checking us out today. This was season 7, episode 28, number 293 of the Decoded Podcast. Peace, bro.
This pod cannot be found anywhere else other than on YouTube, so don't bother looking.